The white tablet struck the marble floor and broke beneath Dante Moretti's shoe. Every voice around the dining table stopped. Claire Bennett still had one hand wrapped around Dante's wrist, her thumb pressed to his pulse. With the other, she had slapped the pill from his fingers before the Moretti council. "Don't take that," she said. Dante looked at her hand before he looked at the shattered tablet. Claire had been the only person permitted to touch him without asking. Now her grip felt like a public challenge. His younger brother, Marco, rose from his chair. "Search her." 2 guards moved in, but Claire released Dante and stepped back on her own. She straightened her full figure, refusing to shrink beneath their stares. Dr. Alden Voss lifted the prescription bottle from beside Dante's plate. The tamper strip was broken. Claire's initials appeared on the replacement label. "These aren't the tablets I prescribed," Voss said. "The medication was changed 2 days ago." "I changed it," Claire answered. A murmur traveled down the table. Dante kept his eyes on her face. She sounded calm, but he knew the small betrayals of her composure. Her left thumb kept rubbing the thin silver ring on her right hand, the one her mother had given her when she finished nursing school. "Why?" he asked. Claire glanced toward the security camera above the wine cabinet, then toward Marco's phone lying face-up beside his glass. "Not here." Marco gave a humorless laugh. "Convenient." He slid a bank statement across the table. $50,000 had entered an account under Claire's name from a supplier connected to the Belandi family. Claire's expression changed. Not guilt, recognition. Dante saw it, and something colder than anger moved through him. His father had died after trusting a man who opened the gates to his killers. Dante had sworn familiarity would never outweigh evidence again. "Tell me the truth now," he said. Claire looked at the pill crushed under his shoe. "The truth I can prove is that you cannot take anything Dr. Voss gives you tonight." Voss stiffened. Marco struck the table with his palm. Dante waited for Claire to name an accomplice, produce a test, or explain the money. She did none of those things. "Did you accept payment from the Bellandis?" "No." "Did you alter my medication without authorization?" Her chin lifted. "Yes." That word cut deeper than it should have. Dante remembered finding her asleep beside his hospital bed after the shooting. He had mistaken constancy for loyalty before. "You're fired." The hurt in her eyes lasted less than a second, but he saw it. "Dante," she said softly, abandoning the formal Mr. Moretti she used around others. "If you ever trusted my judgment, trust it for 1 hour." He turned to his guards. "Remove her credentials, take her phone, escort her beyond the gate." Claire didn't beg. As the guards seized her arms, she looked past Dante to the untouched water glass at his place. "Don't drink that either." Marco ordered the dinner resume the moment the doors closed behind her. Dante remained standing, furious that the room felt altered without her in it. Then a hard spasm seized his chest. His knees struck the floor. Voss reached him first, but the physician's hands hesitated over the emergency kit. Dante's vision narrowed as another doctor tore open Claire's discarded medication package and read the dosage. "Use what she gave him," the doctor shouted. "Now." The injection steadied Dante's heart after 43 violent seconds. When he could breathe again, the second doctor held up the original capsule Voss had prescribed. Its powder had turned blue beneath the reagent strip. "This was poisoned," he said. "Claire's replacement slowed it before the dose reached your heart." Dante looked toward the doors through which he had expelled her. Marco checked the gate camera, and the color left his face. Claire had never made it to the road. The south gate camera showed Claire between the 2 guards for exactly 9 seconds. At the 10th, the screen went black. Dante pushed himself off the dining room floor. Pain tightened beneath his ribs, and the second physician, Dr. Naomi Patel, caught his shoulder before he fell again. "Your heart is still unstable. Find her." Marco was already speaking into his phone. "The grounds are locked down. She can't have gone far." Dante watched the frozen image. Claire's face was turned toward the guard on her left, Silas Ward. She wasn't resisting, but her shoulders had changed. He had seen that posture whenever she noticed a risk before anyone else did. "Where did Ward take her?" The security chief checked his radio. "He isn't answering." Dr. Voss opened another syringe. Dante knocked it from his hand. "Nothing from you." The room went silent again. Voss looked offended, then frightened. Before he could protest, Dr. Patel took the emergency kit Claire had left beneath Dante's chair. Inside were 2 labeled injections, a printed dosage chart, and a sealed blood tube bearing the time from that morning. "She prepared for this," Patel said. The chart recorded Dante's pulse every 4 hours for 3 days. Small changes appeared after each dose Voss had prescribed. Claire had circled the pattern in red and written one instruction at the bottom. "If symptoms begin, use the clear injector first. Preserve blood before giving anything else." Dante recognized her tight, careful handwriting. Claire never relied on memory when a life was involved. She had once made him wait 20 minutes before a council meeting because 2 pharmacies had supplied pills with different markings. He had called her stubborn. She had answered, "You pay me to be right, not agreeable." He had smiled for the rest of that day. Now Marco reached for the chart. Dante folded it and placed it inside his jacket. "I need the estate logs," Patel said. "Every dose, delivery, and person who touched his medication." Voss shook his head. "Claire controlled the medication cabinet." "Claire controlled administration," Patel replied. "You controlled the prescriptions." Dante saw Marco and Voss exchange a glance too brief to name. Then the lights flickered. On the security monitor, every corridor Claire would have crossed vanished from the system at once. Someone had not taken advantage of the blackout. Someone had scheduled it. "Seal the server room," Dante ordered. The chief hesitated. Marco authorized a maintenance window for tonight. Marco lowered his phone. "Routine camera upgrades. I signed the request last week." The explanation was reasonable. That made Dante hate it more. 3 floors below them, Claire woke on the metal floor of a medical transport van. Her wrists were bound behind her. A strip of tape covered her mouth, and the sweet chemical smell on her dress told her what the guards had used. Not enough to keep her unconscious, because neither man had checked her weight before dosing her. They had underestimated her body before they underestimated her training. Claire kept her eyes closed and counted the turns. Left, long descent, sharp right, then the vibration of cobblestones beneath the tires. The old greenhouse road. It ended at a service dock outside the camera grid. She heard Silas Ward in the front passenger seat. "Voss said the second dose should have finished Moretti." The driver cursed. "Then why are we moving her?" "Because she kept a paper log. We find it before midnight, or the council vote dies." Claire's fear became useful. They did not know where the log was. She worked her right thumb against the edge of her mother's silver ring. Its inner band held a narrow seam. Her mother had called it an emergency ring, a relic from years of wilderness nursing. Claire had never needed the hidden cutting edge until now. The van slowed for the service gate. She sliced through one layer of plastic binding, then stopped. Escaping immediately would tell them she had heard too much. She needed the guards to believe she was still helpless, long enough to learn where they planned to search. The driver's phone rang through the speakers. Voss's voice filled the van. "Bring her back," he said. "Dante knows she saved him." Claire stopped cutting the binding. If Voss wanted her returned, the estate had become more dangerous than the road. If she escaped now, however, Dante would be left with a physician who had already tried to kill him twice. The van turned hard. Claire let the movement roll her against the rear doors and found the recessed emergency latch with her fingertips. The guards had tied her wrists, but they had failed to secure her to the floor. She finished cutting the plastic, kept her hands behind her back, and waited. At the service gate, the driver slowed for the iron barrier. Claire pulled the latch and threw her weight against the door. It opened just wide enough for her to drop onto wet grass. Her shoulder struck first. Pain burst down her arm, but she rolled beneath the hedge before Silas could leave the passenger seat. The van's brakes screamed. Claire crawled through thorny branches while boots pounded behind her. She knew the grounds from the emergency evacuation drills no one else had taken seriously. Beyond the hedge stood an old greenhouse connected to the estate infirmary by a narrow utility passage. Claire reached the greenhouse door, slipped inside, and locked it with the manual bolt. Silas hammered against the glass. "You won't make it past the wall." Claire pulled the tape from her mouth and crossed between empty planting tables. A landline hung beside the irrigation controls. She called the only person who could confirm whether her suspicions had ever been more than fear. Evelyn Reyes answered on the second ring. "Claire, did you test the capsules?" 2 days earlier, Claire had noticed that one of Dante's pills softened against her gloved palm. Heat could damage a capsule, so she had first checked the cabinet temperature and then compared it with a sealed dose from the previous week. Only the new capsule changed. She had sent both samples to Evelyn, a hospital pharmacist who had trained beside her. "The old dose is legitimate," Evelyn said. "The new one contains a cardiac glycoside. Enough repeated exposure would look like complications from his gunshot recovery." Claire closed her eyes. She had hoped for a manufacturing defect. "What about the lot number?" "Copied from a shipment destroyed last year. I tried to pull the receiving record, but someone used my credentials to erase it 10 minutes after your message." The second fact was worse than the poison. Voss could write a prescription, but he could not alter hospital pharmacy archives alone. "Can you preserve the test?" "I moved the samples into the hospital's legal evidence locker. My supervisor witnessed the seal." Evelyn paused. "Come to me. We'll call the police." Claire looked toward the utility door leading back under the estate. Police could protect her, perhaps. They could not reach Dante before whoever controlled the cameras, the pharmacy records, and his own guards gave him another dose. "Send Dr. Patel the evidence locker receipt," Claire said. "Only Patel. Don't use the estate network." "Claire, leave." "I can't." The admission hurt, because Dante had already thrown her away. Her loyalty no longer had a job attached to it, and it could not purchase back his trust. She was going underground because allowing him to die would make his rejection the last truth between them. Claire called Dante's private number. Marco answered. "Where are you?" he demanded. She hung up before the connection could be traced, but the greenhouse lights came on one row at a time. The estate system had found the active landline. Glass shattered near the front door. Claire entered the utility passage and pulled the steel door shut behind her. The tunnel was low and dark, forcing her to cradle her injured arm against her body. She moved by counting pipes until she reached the infirmary access panel. The keypad rejected her personal code. Her credentials had already been revoked. She opened the red emergency box beside it. During evacuation drills, Voss had complained that nursing staff should not possess a manual override. Dante had supported Claire, ordering that at least 2 medical employees retain access during a system failure. His decision opened the door now. The infirmary appeared empty. Claire crossed to the oxygen cabinet, where she had hidden her paper medication log behind a stack of sealed masks. The log remained in place, but the blood sample she had stored beside it was gone. In its place sat the original prescription bottle from Dante's dinner. Claire did not touch it. A small red light appeared above the cabinet. The camera had activated the instant she entered. Then Dante's voice came through the infirmary speaker. "Step away from the poison, Claire." Behind her, the utility door locked. Claire faced the camera without moving toward the bottle. "Dante, Voss ordered those guards to take me." Through the speaker came a short silence. Then Voss answered instead. "She's trying to turn you against everyone who can verify what she did." A wall monitor flickered on. Dante sat in the security room with Dr. Patel beside him, his face drained of color. Marco and Voss stood behind his chair. The members of the council remained connected from the dining room. Claire lifted her empty hands. Voss called the van. Silas heard him say the poison should have killed you. "Where is Silas?" Dante asked. "Breaking into the greenhouse." Marco spoke quietly near Dante's shoulder. "We found Silas unconscious beside the service road. His radio and weapon were gone." Claire understood. Silas had reported a version of the escape before pursuing her. He had made himself the victim, while the camera blackout covered everything else. Voss enlarged an image of the poison prescription bottle. "Her fingerprints are on the cap. Her initials are on the label. Because I handled his medication every day. And the money? I don't know who opened that account." Dante's gaze remained fixed on her. Doubt had entered it, but doubt was not trust. A mechanical click came from the refrigerated cabinet behind Claire. 3 infusion bags descended through the automatic delivery slot, prepared for Dante's overnight cardiac treatment. Each bag carried a printed pharmacy label. Claire saw the lot number Evelyn had just identified as false. "Do not let anyone give him those bags." Voss stepped closer to Dante. "That infusion is the only treatment preventing another cardiac event." Claire opened the cabinet. Dante's voice sharpened. "Step away." She ignored him. 1 infusion bag was already punctured for use. Claire squeezed a drop from its port onto sterile gauze and folded the gauze twice. She slipped it beneath her silver ring, hiding it against her palm. The camera above the door could see her body blocking the cabinet, but not what her hands had preserved. Then she placed all 3 bags inside the infirmary's pharmaceutical disposal unit and pulled the emergency lever. The sealed chamber flooded with neutralizing chemicals. Voss pointed at the screen. "She's destroying the remaining evidence." "I'm stopping a 3rd dose," Claire said. "The hospital receipt Dr. Reyes sent confirms there's already a preserved sample," Patel told Dante. "We don't need these bags to test her claim." Marco took Patel's phone before Dante could reach for it. "That message came from Claire's closest friend," he said. "It proves coordination, not innocence." The old wound in Dante's expression closed over every softer feeling. His father's killer had also possessed friends willing to manufacture an alibi. "Claire, surrender the paper log and submit to a search," he ordered. She looked toward the monitor. "Who will search me?" "My security team. The same men who put me in that van?" "You're asking me to accept your word over physical evidence. I'm asking you not to hand me back to the people trying to kill us." Something passed between them, intimate and terrible. Claire had spent 11 months believing that when every other door closed, Dante would at least hear her. He had spent years believing that withholding control invited betrayal. "Control 1. Bring her to the council room," he ordered. "No one harms her." Claire stepped away from the monitor. "You already did." The utility door opened. Silas entered with 2 guards, his shirt torn and blood deliberately smeared across one temple. Dante could see only his back through the camera. Claire held up the paper log. "Look at the timing of every dose. Voss's prescriptions changed before my replacement order. The bank account was opened after I requested the pharmacy test." Silas reached for her. She drove the metal logbook into his wrist and ran through the infirmary's main door. Her injured shoulder slowed her, but the fire alarm she had triggered with the disposal lever released the magnetic locks along the east corridor. She made it past 2 doors before another guard struck her wounded arm. Claire fell against the wall. The paper log slid across the floor. On the security feed, Silas picked it up. Silas pushed a syringe into Claire's thigh. "Stop!" Dante shouted through the speaker. The drug weakened her legs within seconds. Claire pressed her closed fist against her dress, protecting the folded gauze beneath her ring as Silas lifted her. Dante ordered that she be held in the monitored recovery room until Patel could examine her. Marco repeated the command clearly. But when Dante's security team reached that room 4 minutes later, it was empty. The paper log had vanished from the corridor. During Dante's collapse, Marco had invoked his standing authority as deputy to approve emergency medical transfers. The transport carrying Claire had left the estate under that authority. Dante reached the front steps as the transport's taillights vanished beyond the gates. Dr. Patel forced him into a wheelchair before he could descend another step. His pulse remained uneven, and every breath carried a deep pressure beneath his ribs. The weakness enraged him, because Claire had spent 11 months teaching him that ignoring an injured body did not make it obedient. Now no one around him knew which medication was safe. In the security room, Dante ordered the estate locked down and the transport recalled. The dispatcher found no active assignment under Claire's name. Marco's emergency authorization showed only a blank destination field. "Someone altered it after departure," Patel said. Marco stood across the room. "Or Claire arranged the transfer herself before we revoked her credentials." Dante looked at the image of her being carried unconscious through the corridor. "She arranged that?" Marco did not answer. Patel opened Evelyn's message. It included the evidence locker receipt, the pharmacist supervisor's signature, and the time Claire had surrendered the 2 capsule samples for independent testing. Dante read the time twice. Claire had secured the samples before the council dinner. If her purpose had been to destroy evidence, she had voluntarily created the strongest evidence against herself hours earlier. It was the kind of contradiction only someone who did not understand Claire would overlook. She documented everything, especially her own actions. Even when she made a mistake, she left a clean path back to it. Dante remembered asking her to surrender to his men. He had seen fear on her face and mistaken it for resistance. She had asked him who would search her. He had answered with authority instead of protection. "Give me the bank file," he said. Marco placed the statement on the table. Patel called Evelyn from a secured line and asked when Claire first requested the capsule test. The time was 9:42 that morning. The account bearing Claire's name had been opened at 9:47. Dante's medical chart proved Claire had been beside his bed then, recording his blood pressure after a difficult physical therapy session. The account application contained a scan of her nursing license and tax identification page. Both documents came from the Moretti household employment file. Only 5 administrative terminals could access that file. Marco moved toward the door. "I'll have security examine them." "No," Dante said. "Patel will." His brother turned slowly. "She's a doctor, not a security investigator. She's also the only person in this room who hasn't lied to me tonight." The insult landed in front of 3 council members, still connected by video. Marco's expression hardened. Within minutes, the council invoked the Moretti incapacity rule. Until an independent physician declared Dante medically stable, Marco would control estate security and emergency movements. The charity hospital merger vote scheduled for the following night could not be postponed without defaulting the foundation's debt and handing its clinics to the Bellandis. Dante lost command of his guards at the exact moment he needed them to find Claire. He accepted the ruling without argument. Fighting it publicly would warn whoever had used Marco's authority that he was no longer convinced of Claire's guilt. Privately, he gave Voss a lie. "Claire sent Patel a second message," Dante said when the physician examined him. "She claims the original paper log is hidden at the River Clinic. No such message existed." Voss's hands remained steady, but he asked which entrance Claire had named. Dante said the east loading dock, then allowed him to leave. Patel monitored the estate vehicle system from a nursing terminal Marco had forgotten to restrict. 9 minutes later, Silas requested fuel and 2 armed guards for a security inspection at the River Clinic's east dock. Voss had passed the location directly to him. "That proves communication," Patel said, "not who controls whom. It proves Claire told the truth about the van." Dante's certainty cracked in a place anger could not seal. He had not merely failed to believe her. He had ordered her delivered to men she had correctly identified as threats. Patel returned to the transport record. The van's global positioning signal had gone dark at the north gate, but the vehicle could not leave the county without passing an automated toll lane. Marco had disabled the family tracker. He had not disabled the commercial toll tag because a vehicle without one would be stopped for manual identification. The tag had crossed Blackwood Bridge 18 minutes after departure. Only one Moretti medical property lay beyond that bridge, Ridgeview Recovery Center, a storm-damaged clinic still registered as emergency cardiac overflow. Its controlled medication license remained active under one physician's name, Alden Voss. Patel searched the transport supply manifest. The van carried a portable cardiac monitor that automatically uploaded a maintenance alert whenever its battery housing opened. It had sent one alert from Ridgeview 6 minutes ago. Dante gripped the arms of the wheelchair and forced himself upright. Patel stepped in front of him. "You cannot survive a fight." "Then don't let me fight." She studied him, realizing what he was asking. Dante no longer controlled the Moretti soldiers, but Patel controlled his medical transfer. She could legally move an unstable patient to any licensed facility capable of emergency cardiac care. Standing protocol barred Marco's guards from delaying her order. Ridgeview's license was still active. Patel reached for the authorization form. For the first time since Claire disappeared, Dante knew how to reach her without asking Marco's permission. Claire woke with her right wrist strapped to a procedure table. Her shoulder had swollen beneath her dress. The sedative blurred the ceiling, but the folded gauze remained beneath her silver ring. Voss stood at the counter, opening a syringe package. Silas searched Claire's shoes and the seams of her dress while another guard pulled empty drawers from the cabinets. "The paper log isn't here," Silas said. "Then she kept a second sample," Voss replied. Claire tested the cheap plastic restraint without lifting her arm. Voss needed her hidden evidence before he could kill her. That need kept her alive. Headlights crossed the frosted windows. Voss looked toward the hall. No one followed us. An electronic chime sounded above the door. A recorded voice announced the arrival of an unstable cardiac patient under emergency physician transfer. Dante, at Ridgeview's entrance, Marco's guards tried to block the ambulance. Patel activated the emergency admission alarm. Ridgeview's active license forced the doors to unlock and created an outside record. "Refuse him," Patel told the guards, "and every state medical regulator receives an automatic critical care denial." The doors opened. Dante entered on a stretcher with his heart monitor sounding beside him. Claire's replacement medication had bought time, not a cure. They reached the procedure wing as the power failed. The stretcher monitor switched to its internal battery. Behind the locked doors, a metal tray crashed. "Claire!" Dante struck the door with his fist. Inside, Voss had ordered Silas to move her. Claire used the moment Silas turned toward the alarm. She drew the cutting edge of her ring across the plastic restraint and twisted until it split. She rolled from the table before he could grab her. Her knees buckled, but she caught the counter and shoved the open supply cart into his path. Silas crashed over it. Claire reached the wall controls and pulled the fire release, unlocking the procedure doors. Dante entered as she stumbled into the corridor. He saw the bruises around her wrist, the blood on her shoulder, and the puncture mark in her thigh. Every injury had followed an order, carrying his authority. He reached for her. "Don't touch me." Dante stopped. Voss escaped through the rear stairwell with Silas. Before leaving, he shut down Ridgeview's medical gas and locked the ambulance bay. Dante's damaged heart could finish the attack for him. The monitor beside the stretcher began sounding rapidly. Claire looked at Dante. "Lie down." He obeyed without argument. Patel checked the monitor while Claire opened the portable emergency kit. Her left hand trembled from the sedative, and her right arm could barely lift. She told Patel which injector to prepare, but did not attempt the task herself. "Clear dose, half first," Claire said. "His pressure drops if you give it all at once." Patel administered the medication. Dante's rhythm worsened before it steadied. Claire kept 2 fingers against his neck, counting each pulse. His eyes stayed on her face. "You came back to the estate after I fired you," he said. "You were still in danger, and I handed you to them." Claire removed her fingers the moment Patel confirmed his pulse was stable. "This is not where you apologize. Tell me where. After I'm safe. After my name is cleared. After you understand what you're apologizing for." Dante nodded. He did not ask her to forgive him or tell her that he had only followed the evidence. For the first time, he allowed her anger to stand without trying to control what it meant. Patel found Claire's shoulder badly strained, but not dislocated. She would need a sling and help using both hands. When Dante offered his coat, she refused. He placed it on the chair. Patel powered the monitor from the ambulance, then accessed Ridgeview's medication terminal. Voss had erased patient files, but the dispensing machine retained a sealed inventory record. The machine showed that Voss had withdrawn the false capsules, the sedative used on Claire, and the cardiac compound found in Dante's blood. The withdrawals were real, but all had been entered under Claire's stolen credentials. "He built the medical side of the frame," Claire said. "The copied lot, the poison, the account, all of it. But he couldn't schedule the estate blackout or command my guards," Dante replied. Claire looked at him. He told Silas that if they didn't find my log before midnight, the council vote would fail. The name neither of them spoke filled the room. Dante had motive, access, and betrayal. He still did not have proof strong enough to accuse his brother before the council. Claire slid the silver ring from her swollen finger. Beneath it, The folded gauze carried the drop she had preserved from the destroyed infusion bag. "Evelyn can compare this with the capsules in the evidence locker," she said. "It proves I destroyed poison, not treatment. Dante did not take it. Who do you trust with it?" Claire studied him, recognizing the change inside the question. He was offering control instead of demanding it. "Patel," she answered. Dante turned to the doctor. "Then it stays with Patel." Claire placed the gauze in Patel's gloved hand. "This clears what I did," she said. "It doesn't expose who ordered it." Dante looked toward the dark windows, where Marco's council vote waited less than a day away. "Then you decide how we expose him." Claire refused to return to the Moretti estate. Patel drove them instead to the hospital pharmacy, where Evelyn met the ambulance at a restricted delivery entrance. Dante entered as a cardiac patient under Patel's care. Claire entered as the victim of an unlawful sedation, her arm secured in a sling. The distinction mattered to her. Inside the evidence room, Evelyn sealed the gauze from Claire's ring in a new container, while Patel witnessed the transfer. The original capsules remained in a separate locked box under the pharmacist supervisor's custody. Laboratory comparison confirmed that both carried the same cardiac poison and the same inactive filler. Claire had destroyed another prepared dose, not Dante's legitimate treatment. For the first time since the dinner, her innocence existed somewhere beyond Dante's belief. He watched her read the report. "I'll call the council now." "No. This clears you. It clears the medication switch. It doesn't explain the account, the blackout, or why your brother sent me to Ridgeview." Dante accepted the correction. A day earlier, he would have treated hesitation as disobedience. Now, he pulled out a chair and waited for her to decide what came next. They spread the documents across a pharmacy conference table. The capsule report proved the poisoning. Ridgeview's sealed inventory connected Voss to the drugs and Claire's sedation. The toll record and transfer authorization proved that Marco's emergency authority had moved her to Voss's clinic. Marco could still claim Voss had deceived him. He could say the blank destination had been filled after he signed it and that Silas had exceeded his orders. What they lacked was proof that Marco knew where Claire was being taken and why. Evelyn examined the forged bank application. "Whoever opened this account used her employment file 5 minutes after she requested my test." Claire looked at Dante. "How did Marco learn about the test?" "Your message entered the estate through the medical portal. The same portal used to schedule medication deliveries and maintenance access." Dante understood. The poisoners had not monitored every phone or terminal. They had watched one system because Voss needed it for prescriptions and Marco needed it for security changes. Claire proposed giving that system one final message. The message would state that Evelyn had recovered a duplicate page from Claire's paper log. It would claim the page, named Ridgeview, as the destination on Marco's original transfer order and had been placed inside the council archive for presentation at the hospital merger vote. No duplicate page existed. If Marco ignored the message, they lost nothing. If he attempted to remove a document that only the conspirators believed existed, his action would connect him to the missing log, the transfer, and the cover-up. "He'll send Silas," Dante said. "He can't enter the archive." The Moretti Council archive was not a digital server. It was a locked records room adjoining the ballroom where the merger vote would occur. By family rule, only Dante, Marco, and the council clerk could enter it during an active succession dispute. Marco had insisted on that restriction years earlier to keep outsiders from altering bloodline records. The rule would now force him to act personally. Evelyn created the false laboratory notice, but Claire wrote the wording. Patel uploaded it through her legitimate medical account, so the record could not be dismissed as an anonymous threat. They still needed protection when Marco moved. Dante offered his remaining loyal soldiers. Claire shook her head. "I won't walk into another room surrounded by men whose loyalty I can't verify." "Then choose who enters with you." Patel carries the gauze report. Evelyn carries the original capsule report. Neither leaves my sight. "And me?" Claire met his eyes. "You speak only when I ask. You do not accuse Marco before I finish. You do not order anyone to take me anywhere." The terms cost Dante the public control on which his reputation rested. "Agreed." They prepared for the possibility that Marco would cut the ballroom network. Evelyn printed 3 signed copies of both laboratory reports. One remained in the evidence room. The pharmacist supervisor sealed another for delivery to the council clerk. Patel carried the third with the gauze container. Dante gave Claire his personal counsel credential, granting her the right to enter the ballroom and challenge evidence presented against her. She stared at the black card in his palm. This doesn't repair what happened. I know. It doesn't mean I trust you. I know that too. Claire took the card. The controlled notice entered the medical portal at 2:17 in the morning. At 2:23, Marco used his deputy authority to unseal the council archive 6 hours early. The registry captured his name, and the clerk received the alert automatically. At 2:26, Marco moved the hospital merger vote forward by 2 hours and ordered the ballroom searched for Claire. Dante read the new schedule. He took the bait. Claire rose carefully, protecting her injured shoulder. No, she said. He changed the battlefield. Marco moved the vote to 7 in the morning, before the council clerk could receive the sealed laboratory report from the hospital courier. He also changed the location. Instead of the Moretti estate, the council gathered in the Foundation Hospital ballroom, where donors, department chiefs, and representatives from 3 allied families had already arrived for the merger announcement. Canceling would trigger the debt default. Delaying would make Dante appear too weak to lead. Marco had turned a private challenge into a public test of power. Claire entered through the hospital's patient transfer corridor with Patel and Dante. Her navy dress was torn at the shoulder, and the sling made every injury visible. Evelyn followed with signed laboratory copies, but security stopped her before the ballroom doors. Pharmacy employees aren't authorized inside a succession vote, the guard said. Dante stepped forward. Claire touched his sleeve with her uninjured hand. Not yet. He stopped, honoring the agreement. Patel remained beside Claire with the gauze report. Evelyn returned to the evidence room rather than risk having the original capsule report seized. It was the safest choice, but it left Claire without the witness who had tested the first samples. At the ballroom entrance, Marco's security scanner rejected Dante's black council credential. Marco appeared beyond the doors, immaculate in a charcoal suit. Your authority was suspended under the incapacity ruling. Any credential you transferred after that ruling is invalid. The council clerk examined the card. The challenge right was granted before the vote was rescheduled. Family procedure allows the bearer to speak. Marco could not overrule the clerk without making the entire merger vulnerable to challenge. He smiled and permitted Claire to enter. 200 people watched her cross the ballroom. The last time many of them had seen her, Dante had fired her while council cameras recorded the accusation. Now enlarged images of the forged bank statement covered the screens behind Marco. Beside them appeared footage of Claire entering the infirmary and destroying the infusion bags. Marco began without greeting her. Claire Bennett poisoned my brother, staged his rescue, and destroyed the remaining medication when her payment was discovered. He placed Claire's missing paper log on the central table inside a clear evidence sleeve. Several pages had been replaced. The altered entries claimed Claire had begun changing Dante's medication 1 week before she requested Evelyn's test. A later page described the Belandi payment as compensation for confidential medical information. Claire felt the room tilt, but she kept her face still. Marco had found no duplicate page in the archive. He had understood the bait and adapted. Instead of hiding the stolen log, he had rewritten it and made it the centerpiece of his accusation. You entered the archive 6 hours early, Claire said, because your false notice claimed evidence affecting this vote had been placed inside. Marco turned toward the clerk. I found nothing. Her message was designed to manufacture suspicion against me. It was a credible answer. The registry proved Marco had entered, but not what he had done there. Patel presented the laboratory comparison. The capsules prescribed by Dr. Voss and the infusion sample Claire preserved contained the same cardiac poison. Marco did not deny it. Dr. Voss has disappeared, he said. My brother's nurse had unrestricted access to his medication and a close friend inside the pharmacy. These reports prove poisoning occurred. They do not prove who added it. He pointed to the gauze container. That sample spent an hour hidden against Claire's own hand. She could have contaminated it before giving it to Dr. Patel. Low voices spread through the ballroom. Claire had anticipated an attack on the evidence, but not one delivered so calmly. Marco did not need to destroy the report. He only needed to make it insufficient. Dante moved beside her. "Tell me when." The words were quiet enough that only Claire heard them. She looked at the council table. 4 votes would approve the merger and confirm Marco as acting head under it. Dante recovered. Marco already controlled 3. The 4th belonged to an allied elder who valued stability above truth. The clerk called the vote. The first council member approved. The second approved. Before the third spoke, Claire studied the merger packet. A new procurement rider had been attached after midnight. It granted exclusive medication supply rights for all foundation clinics to the same company named as the sender of her false payment. The Bellandis were not receiving the clinics through default. Marco was giving them the supply chain in exchange for support. "That rider wasn't in the original agreement," Dante said. Marco answered from across the table. "The supplier guaranteed the emergency financing required after your collapse." Again, he had prepared a lawful-looking explanation. The third vote approved. 1 more would transfer the clinics and their purchasing authority before the hospital courier arrived. Claire asked permission to inspect the paper log. Marco allowed it, confident that she could not prove when the pages had been altered. She could not touch the sleeve with her injured arm, so Patel held it at eye level. Claire read the false dosage entries carefully. One claimed she had administered Dante's evening capsule at 8:15 on Tuesday. Another stated that his pulse had remained normal for 2 hours afterward. Claire remembered Tuesday. Dante had suffered severe dizziness during physical therapy. She had delayed the capsule and recorded his pulse every 15 minutes before giving it shortly after 10. The paper log containing that truth had been stolen, but it had not been her only record. At dinner, Patel had found Claire's printed dosage chart inside the emergency kit. Dante had folded it and placed it in his jacket before Marco could take it. Claire looked at him. "Are you wearing the same jacket?" Dante reached inside. His hand closed around the chart. The allied elder raised his hand to cast the 4th vote. "Wait," Claire said. The allied elder lowered his hand before the 4th vote became final. Dante placed the dosage chart on the council table. Patel identified it as the document she had removed from Claire's emergency kit immediately after Dante collapsed. It had remained inside Dante's jacket from that moment onward. Claire pointed to Tuesday's readings. "This chart shows his pulse becoming unstable before the evening medication. I delayed the dose until shortly after 10. The paper log Marco presented claimed she had given the capsule at 8:15 and recorded a normal pulse afterward. Both records could not be true." Marco did not retreat. She created both documents. A disagreement between her own records proves carelessness, not forgery. "Then check the monitor," Claire said. Dante had worn a portable cardiac monitor throughout his recovery. Its local memory contained the automatic pulse readings from Tuesday, including the sharp decline at 8 and the recovery after 10. Patel displayed the device record without using the ballroom network. The monitor matched Claire's chart. The altered log did not. The allied elder withdrew his pending vote. Marco turned toward the council. "That still does not prove I changed the log." "No," Claire said. "You proved that yourself." She asked Patel to hold the evidence sleeve closer. On one of the replaced pages, a margin note stated that a duplicate transfer record had been sent to Ridgeview. Claire faced the room. "I never wrote that. I didn't know Ridgeview existed until I woke inside the transport van." The phrase had come from the false notice Claire and Evelyn placed in the compromised medical portal after the original log was stolen. The notice claimed a duplicate page connected Marco's transfer order to Ridgeview. Marco had copied the invented detail into his forged version, believing it would explain the evidence he expected to find in the archive. The council clerk opened the access registry. Marco had entered the archive 6 minutes after receiving the false notice. He was now presenting the altered log as original. Marco's calm finally broke. Voss could have changed those pages. Then tell us how Voss entered the bloodline archive, Claire replied. Your own rule barred him. Marco looked toward Dante. You're going to surrender this family because a nurse embarrassed you? Dante did not answer. He had promised Claire the floor. She placed the forged bank statement beside the merger packet. The company that supposedly paid me is the same company receiving the medication contract in Marco's new rider. My account was opened 5 minutes after I requested an independent test, using identity documents taken from the Moretti employment system. Marco controlled that system during the scheduled camera blackout. The story no longer required codes or theories. Marco had used the future supplier to invent Claire's payment, Voss to poison Dante, and Silas to remove the woman who discovered it. Dante's collapse gave Marco temporary authority. The merger would make that authority profitable and permanent. Marco touched the earpiece, hidden beneath his collar. Patel's phone vibrated. Evelyn had sent one sentence: "They are inside the pharmacy." Marco had anticipated losing the room. While the council argued, Voss and Silas had entered the restricted pharmacy to destroy the original capsules and the supervisor's sealed report. But Evelyn had returned there for that reason. The evidence locker required both her credential and her supervisor's physical key. They had secured themselves inside the evidence room with the capsule box before Voss arrived. His physician access opened only the outer pharmacy. It could not open the evidence door, and hospital security was already responding. The ballroom network went dark a second later. Marco's guards moved toward Claire. "Stay where you are," she told Dante. He obeyed. Claire turned to the council clerk. "The reports were printed before we came. Patel has one. Your sealed copy is already with the hospital supervisor. Cutting the screens changes nothing." Marco's contingency had failed because the proof no longer depended on one device, one witness, or one room. The allied elder stood. "I withdraw my support for the merger and recognize a formal accusation against Marco Moretti." 2 other council members followed. Marco's emergency authority ended with the majority declaration. The security chief ordered his guards to stand down. This time, when they approached Claire, she chose where they stopped. "No one touches me," she said. They obeyed. Dante stepped forward only after she nodded. He faced the donors, physicians, allied families, and council members who had watched him fire her. "Claire Bennett switched my medication because it was poisoned," he said. "She saved my life. I accused her publicly, stripped away her protection, and delivered her to the men trying to silence her. Every accusation I made against her was wrong." No excuse followed. The clerk removed the forged log and bank statement from the display. Patel replaced them with Claire's verified chart and the signed laboratory report. Claire's name returned to the ballroom in her own voice. "Record the truth," she told the clerk. "All of it." 6 weeks later, the Foundation Hospital ballroom filled again. This time, Claire entered through the main doors. Her shoulder had healed enough to leave the sling behind, though she still attended physical therapy twice a week. The bruises around her wrist had faded. Her mother's silver ring remained scratched where its hidden edge had cut through the restraints. Marco no longer sat at the council table. The council had removed him from every family office and surrendered the hospital records, forged account application, and transfer authorization to state prosecutors. Voss lost his medical license while awaiting trial for attempted murder and evidence tampering. Silas faced charges for kidnapping and assault. The supplier agreement was voided. Without Marco's secret rider, the hospital merger was renegotiated, preserving the clinics and their staff under independent oversight. Dante had recovered, but he had not reclaimed sole authority. He surrendered his power to appoint the council's security chief and accepted an outside audit of every Moretti medical business. The decision cost him control over the system his family had ruled for decades. Before the same donors, physicians, and allied families who had witnessed Claire's accusation, Dante read the council's formal correction into the permanent record. It cleared her of every charge, acknowledged that her unauthorized medication change had been an emergency act that saved his life, and accepted responsibility for the harm caused by his orders. Then he stepped away from the microphone. Claire spoke for herself. She announced that she would not return as Dante's private nurse. With Evelyn, she had opened an independent medication safety practice, serving patients who feared retaliation for reporting medical misconduct. The foundation became its first client. But the contract gave Claire full control over investigations and the right to publish findings without Moretti approval. She had refused a private settlement. Instead, the compensation for her unlawful detention funded legal and medical support for whistleblowers across the foundation clinics. Her future did not depend on Dante loving her correctly. After the ceremony, he waited outside her new office rather than entering. "May I come in?" Claire considered him through the open doorway. "Yes." Dante stopped several feet from her desk. No guards accompanied him. "I believed evidence that matched my oldest fear," he said. "But the evidence did not force me to humiliate you. It did not force me to ignore your warning or send you back to men you identified as dangerous. I chose control over your safety. I was wrong, and you paid for it." Claire touched the scratched silver ring. "I loved you before that dinner," she said. "That made what you did worse." Pain crossed his face, but he did not use her confession to ask for comfort. "I love you," he answered. "I'm not asking you to return. I'm asking whether I may earn the chance to know you without employing you, commanding you, or deciding what your forgiveness should look like." Claire had once believed usefulness was the price of being kept. Now she owned work that mattered, a home no Moretti guard controlled, and a life Dante could enter only by invitation. "There will be no secrets disguised as protection," she said. "No decisions about my safety without me. No public promises you haven't already proven in private." "Agreed. And I'm not ready to call this forgiveness." "Then we won't call it that." Claire walked around the desk. Dante's gaze dropped to her hand, but he did not reach for it. At the dining table weeks earlier, she had asked him to trust her for 1 hour. He had refused. Now she held out her hand by choice. "You can have 1 hour," she said. Dante waited until she nodded before taking it. Together, they stepped outside, not as Dawn and Nurse, but as two people beginning on terms Claire had chosen.